Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Jyotirmayananda Society, a journey to self-realization. Please subscribe our channel for the mystical meanings of the scriptures and to enjoy daily satsang with us. We are currently studying the book Yoga of Perfection, the summary of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Commentaries by our worshipful master Swami Jyotirmayananda Maharaj, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. We are currently studying the chapter number 3. One should perform one's ordained duties. It is Karma Yoga, chapter 3. Action has universal implication. Let this feeling develop that God is being worshipped through every action. Let action be performed in the sense of sacrifice. In the beginning of creation, Brahmaji, the creator, having created human beings, commanded them to perform sacrifice for their evolution and for the attainment of all their desires. Sacrifice is the law of prosperity and evolution. Sacrifice implies the offering of whatever one has to the altar of universal purpose, sharing whatever one has for helping humanity, living a life of dedication for accomplishing the mission of God. Such sacrifice leads to abundance. Such renunciation leads to prosperity. The shining forces of heaven, the devas, are nourished by the performance of sacrifices. These shining forces emerge in the hearts of the sacrificer and enable him to perform still greater sacrifices. Thus, man and God cooperate in the universal mission of God. Sacrifice, therefore, is the most effective method of acquiring universal peace and harmony. One who enjoys the objects of the world without having practiced sacrifice or without having a sense of renunciation in his heart is a thief. He enjoys for intensifying his ego, his separated existence, and his individuality. This leads to endless misery. Matter is the sustainer of human bodies. This matter arises from the rain of cosmic will. By practicing sacrifice, one receives abundant energy from the cosmic rain. Sacrifice is practiced through the performance of action. Because every action of a human being is an aspect of the universal mission, it has a universal implication. The sense of egoism creates bondage, while its renunciation converts every action into a sacrifice. Acts of sacrifice bring about the emergence of the shining forces of God in the human heart. Performance of action has been enjoined in the Vedas. The Vedas arise from the Absolute. Therefore, every action carries with it the impression of divine authority when it is performed with the sense of sacrifice. Through every action, one touches the feet of the Lord. Through every action, one worships the cosmic being. Action, therefore, should not be a mere burden that the life must bear, but it should be participation in the mission of the Supreme Beloved, God. One must forget one's ego and attachments. One must experience immense joy, for when action is performed with love, it is no longer a burden but a privilege, no longer a boredom but the very spring of all that is good and beautiful. Great men like King Janak and others attained perfection through action. One must tread the path that they have shown. Lord Krishna sets his own example. There is nothing to be desired by him in the three worlds. Yet he performs actions for the sake of the welfare of the world. Ignorant men act impelled by their desires and attachments, but the sages act impelled by the feeling of union with all, impelled by non attachment to all that perishes. A sage does not disturb the ignorant, but he encourages them to perform action until their hearts are ready for the vision of higher and deeper laws of life. If the ignorant are discouraged from the path of action, their evolution will be checked, whether knowingly or unknowingly. All are participants of the cosmic mission. Those who know, they are the yogis. Those who are impelled to work without happiness and peace in their hearts, by desire alone, they are in bondage. But act one must for evolution. That is the cosmic law. A knower of self separates the self from the three gunas of sattva, rajas, and tamas. He feels that gunas move among their effects. The self is ever untouched by action and enjoyments of the world. It is like either sustaining the clouds, totally untouched. In order to realize the pristine glory of oneself, one must not come under the sway of the lower self. Those who are of weak will are impelled by nature. They cannot extricate themselves from the whirling wheel of the world process. The cause of such bondage, dependence, and slavery is raga and dvesha, attachment and hatred to pleasant and painful objects of the world. One should try to balance one's vision in the mind of pleasant and painful objects. The performance of one's own duty with the vision of yoga would lead to the destruction of impressions of raga and dvesha. But one who gives up one's duty, designed by one's own nature, and takes up another's duty, considering them to be grand and sublime, will not be able to rise above the attachment and hatred. So, the law of karma is profound, and that is called swadharma, that is your natural duty. For example, it's the duty of water to flow and to be liquid, and that is the dharma. And the dharma or the duty of the fire is to burn and to give light, not sometimes but all the time, consistently. That is called swadharma. Arjuna then asks, O Lord, by what is man impelled to commit sin even against his desires, as if constrained by force? Krishna answers that desire and anger are the evil forces which are ever unsatiated and which destroy the balance of mind, throwing it in a whirlpool of likes and dislikes. These impressions of likes and dislikes conceal the fire of knowledge, even as smoke conceals fire, or even as an embryo is enveloped by the uh, in the pregnancy by the womb. So one should find out the seeds of these layers of the soul, and desire, anger, and they should destroy them for the attainment of knowledge. So it has to be destroyed at the root, the seeds of likes and dislikes, and that's why sadhana continues to take so much time. It's a lifelong process. We cannot achieve um, these things in a short time frame. With ignorance as the source, the melodies of desire and anger vitiate intellect, mind, and senses, and impel them to various sinful actions. Therefore, one should patiently endeavor to purify the senses by the mind, mind by the intellect, and intellect by the shining vision of the self. Because mind is higher than the senses, intellect is higher than the mind, and the spirit is higher than the intellect. With the emergence of the power from what is higher, one can purify what is lower and gross. This is the supreme method of self control, sublimation, and integration, which are essential features of one's spiritual journey. Every control over a restless function of the senses will enable you to develop power of mind. Such development of power will further enable you to control the senses even more. Further, the concentrated mind will be flooded with the light of intellect. The emergence of the light of intellect will be flooded with the light of intuition, and the intellect will become more and more sharp and effulgent. It will manifest the glory of spirit in the increased proportion. With the infusion of the light of spirit, the intellect is purified, it destroys ignorance and dies to the plane of duality and rises as intuition, beholding the grandeur of non duality. So, the Advaita is the non duality principle, um, the one God principle of the sun being the non dual self, and all its rays, which are in the millions and billions, being the duality aspect. So, they both end up as Advaita. Advaita is non duality. Thus ends the third discourse entitled Karma Yoga, Yoga of Integral Knowledge. So we will continue with the next chapter, Jnana Yoga, in tomorrow's satsang. This is Swami Nikhilananda. Hari Om Tat Sat.